right? So like, so this is Revelation chapter 11, verse 1. And there was given me a reed likened to a rod. And the angel stood saying, Rise and measure the temple of the Most High, and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not, for it is given into the Gentiles. And the holy city shall they tread underfoot 42 months. Right, so the reed likened to a rod is the measuring stick, right? A measuring between the Israelites and the Gentiles, right? And the measuring stick is the Bible, right? Let's get the book of Zechariah. Right. Zechariah chapter 2, verse 2. And then said I, Whither thou goest thou, Salakia. Then said I, Whither goest thou? And he said unto me, To measure Jerusalem, to see what is the breadth thereof, and what is the length thereof. Right. So this is going into the Israel, man. Right. This is going into the Israelites. Right. And being that not only that temple, right, but this is also going into the scriptures, man. Right. This being the Bible, man. Right. And we also can go into how this also going into Israel. This is First Peter 4:17. Right. It said, For the time is come that judgment must begin at the house of the Most High. And if it first begun at us, where shall the end be of them that obey not the gospel? Right? So the temple of the Most High are the Israelites. All right? And you can take measurements by teaching the Bible. Right? So all this is going into the scriptures. Right? And the, who are the vessels that operate operate the Bible and teach the Bible? The Israelites. That's why the Israelites are the temple, man. Right? And the author, right? And that author is also Israel. Let's get Isaiah 19, verse 19. Right? This is it say in that day shall there be an altar to Yahweh in the midst of the land of Egypt, and a pillar at the border thereof to the Lord. Right? And what is Egypt representing here, man? Egypt is representing Israel. I mean, Salakia. Egypt is representing America, man. Right? And the Israelites being there, right? We are the altar. We are the temple, right? And the Most High is going to measure us like we are the temple because we are the building according to First Corinthians the third chapter, man. Right? So the Most High is going to put us upon that altar, and He's going to make a sacrifice. Right? So let's go back to Revelations 11. Revelations 11 and right when they say in the holy cities they tread underfoot 40 and 2 months. Right? It's going into 40 and 2 months is 3.5 years, which is prophetic. Right? Let's get Psalm 71. Psalm 71 and verse 1. Right? Right? So Psalm 71 and 1. In thee, O Yahweh, do I put my trust. Right? Let me never be put into confusion. Deliver me in thy righteousness and cause me to escape. Incline thy ear unto me and save me. Be thou my strong habitation, whereunto I may continually resort. Thou hast given me commandment to save me, for thou art my rock and my fortress. Right. So this is prophetic, man. Right. So let's go to Luke 21. Luke 21 and 24. Right. It say, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Right. So this is going into the time of the Gentiles being fulfilled and the Lord saving Israel, man. Right. Delivering Israel. That's why King David was being prophetic in Psalm 71 and 1. You know, he said, "Save me by the commandments." All right, let's go to Revelations. Revelation chapter 11, verse 3. And I will give power unto my two witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. All right, this is going into Israel being in slavery. And 1,203 is a prophet for 350 years, right? When you go into Revelation chapter 12, verse 14, right? And the two witnesses are northern and southern kingdom, right? And they say when they say clothed in sackcloth, because that's how we dressed in captivity, right? We had a lower state, we had the bottom, right? So all this is prophetic, right? Israel going into chains. King David saying, "Hey, save me by thy commandments," right? Be my habitation, right? Because King David even knew about this prophecy, man, right? That Israel was going to be going into slavery, right? So this 350 years is going into Israel, man, right? Being put in slavery, being put in captivity under the so-called white man, right? Verse 4. And these are the two olive trees and the two candlesticks standing the before the power of the earth, right? So this is going into the nation of Israel being broken into two parts, right? Which represents the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, right? And the elect is in both parts, which is the two candlesticks, right? Let's get Psalms. Psalms 52 and 8. I am like a green olive tree in the house of the Most High. I trust in thy mercy of the Most High forever and ever, and I will praise thee forever because thou hast done it, and I will wait on thy name, for it is good before thy saints. Right. So this is going into Israel being the olive tree in the house of the Most High. We already pointed out that Israel is the temple of the Most High. Right. So Israel is that green olive tree. Let's get another precept to prove that. Let's get Jeremiah. Jeremiah 11 and 16, it said, "The Lord called thy name a green olive tree, fair and of goodly fruit, with the noise of the great tumult. He hath kindled fire upon it, and the branches are broken up." Right? Why are the branches broken up? Because the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahushua, he split the kingdom up, man. Right? So it was a kingdom split. That's why you got the northern and southern kingdom, right? But the elect is coming out of both kingdoms. Right? So that's what this is saying, man. All right, let's go back to Revelations. Revelation chapter 11, verse 5. And if any man will hurt them, fire proceedeth out of their mouth and devour their enemies. If any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. And these have power to shut heaven, and it rain not the days of their prophecy, and have power over waters to turn them to blood, and smite the earth with all the plagues as often as they will. Right, so this goes back into history. The prophets having spiritual powers. Right, Prophet Elijah called the rain to stop for 3 years. Right, let's get First Kings. Let's get First Kings 17 and verse number 1. Right, and it say, "And Elijah the Tishbite, who was an inhabitant of Gilead, said unto Ahab, As Yahweh, power of Israel, liveth, before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain 3 years, but according to my word." Right, so Elijah made rain stop for 3 years, and that's what this is going into, man. The prophets having spiritual powers, man. Right, going back into times past. Right, and the prophet Moses turned the water into blood. Right, also as well. That's what it's also going into. When they say turn waters waters to turn them to blood, right? It's going into Moses when he's spitting Egypt and the Egyptians with these different plagues, right? When you go into Exodus chapter 7, verse 20 and 21, right? Let's bring it out for education's sake. All right, this is Exodus chapter 27, verse 20. All right, we're going to read the verse 21. And Moses and Aaron did so as the Lord commanded, and he lifted up the rod and smote the waters that were in the river in the sight of Pharaoh, in the sight of his servants, and all the rivers that were in the river were turned to blood, and the fish in the river died, and the river stank, and the Egyptians could not drink of the water of the river, and there was blood throughout the land of Israel. Right. So, no, this is going into the prophets having spiritual power, man. Moses turned the river into blood, and Elijah stopped rain from coming for 3 years. All right, so let's go back to you. I believe we on verse 7. All right, Revelations 11 and 7. And when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that ascended out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them, right? And shall overcome them and kill them, right? Dealing with the time frame of slavery, right? And when that testimony, which is slavery, is finished, after Israel was still being oppressed and killed, right? And it's also going into how all the programs like welfare, food stamps, will slowly be taken away in the midst of that. They're going to wage war again against us, which will be Jacob's trouble, man. Right. So Revelation 11 it kind of jumps. Right. It goes into the prophets. Right, which is the prophets that is speaking on is Elijah and Moses. Right, and it jumps back into the nation. Right, the nation being in captivity. So it kind of jumps back and forth, man. Right, verse 8. Right, and it's going to give us clear indication that, man. Right, and it say, and their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Anawan, our Lord, was crucified. Right, so this is twofold. One going into Israel being spiritually dead after slavery. Right, let's get Proverbs 21. Right, this Proverbs 21 to 16. The man that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the dead. Right, so this is going to be spiritually dead. Right, not knowing, understanding, not knowing the commandments. Right, and another fold. Right, and another fold is going into Israel dying in America. Right, because we know America is spiritually Sodom and Egypt. Right, because we were enslaved here, right, which is Egypt, and homosexuality is pushed there, which is sodomy, right. So this is going into America, the Israelites being spiritually dead, man, right. Verse 9, and it say, and they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. Right? All the nations are allied on our downfall, right? When you read Psalms, the 83rd chapter, right? 3 days and a half goes back into the 350-year prophecy, right? That we're going to have to serve captivity, man. Right? Verse 10, and they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them and make merry, and shall send gifts one to another, because these two prophets tormented them that dwelt in the earth. Right? And these gifts, and the gifts were Israelite slaves sold. Right? When you read Joel 3 and 6 and Deuteronomy 28 and 68. Right? Revelation 11 and 11. Right? And it's saying, after 3 days and a half, the spirit of life from the Most High entered into them and stood up upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them. Right? So another 300, Salakia, after the 350-year period, the spirit of the Most High, Yahweh Shem Shah, right, came upon us. Right? Because we were spiritually dead and we woke up. Right? And stood on their feet means they found out that they are God's chosen and started teaching on the streets, right? And other nations are afraid of our awakening, right? So let's get a precept on that. All right, good precept on that. Right, just to get a precept on that. This is Baruch chapter 2 verse 30. For I knew they would not hear me, because it is a stiff necked people, but in the land of their captivities they shall remember themselves. Right. So this is the Lord bestowing his covenant, renewing his covenant, right, and putting his spirit back on his servants, man. That's what it's going into. Right. So this is going into Israel, man. This Revelation 11 is going into Israel. Right. And Elijah and Moses are a representation of Israel. Right. Verse 12, it is saying, I heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them. All right. This is going into the deliverance from America. Right. And the other nations will see our salvation. Right. When you read Wisdom of Solomon chapter 5, let's bring that out. Wisdom of Solomon chapter 5. Then shall the righteous man stand in great boldness before the face of such have afflicted him, and made no account of his labors. When they see it, they shall be troubled with terrible fear, and shall be amazed with the strangeness of his salvation, so far beyond all that they look for. And they repentant and groaning for anguish of the spirit shall say within themselves, this was he whom he had sometimes arisen, a proverb and reproach. Right? These people was in captivity. Right? These people were niggas, spicks. They was at the bottom of the barrel, man. They was stupid. They didn't know nothing. They were like, damn, these are God's chosen people. They were right all along. Right? We fools are counting his life madness. Right? People thinking we were crazy for saying that we're God's chosen people, that we waking up in his end to be without honor. Right? So this is going into the strangeness of our salvation that these other nations are going to have to see, man. It's going to be like a movie. Right, verse 13, in the same hour there was a great earthquake, and the 10th part of the city fell, and the earthquake was slain of man 7,000, and the remnant were afraid and gave glory unto the God of heaven. Right, so the 10th part of the city is America. Slain of 7,000 men is spiritual for completion. Right, and the elect will be affrighted because they are going to be nervous, but at the same time they will get praise. Right. So they're gonna have that faith in Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. Right, verse 14, the second woe is past. Behold, the third woe coming quickly. Right, this is talking about World War III. Right, this is playing upon tables. Right, this is talking about World War III. Right, verse 15, and the seven angels sounded, and there were great voices in the heavens saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and shall reign forever and ever. Right? So the seventh trumpet is going into Yahweh Shai kingdom being established. Right? So this is going into this the second trumpet where Yahweh Shai kingdom is being established, man. Right? Verse 16, in the fourth and 20 elders, right, were set before the Most High, and the seats upon their faces, and worship the Most High, saying, we give thanks, O Yahweh, power almighty, which are and has and are to come, because thou hast taken to thee that great power and hast reigned. Right? So whatever Yahweh Shah said is exactly what's going to happen. Right? Remember, his word is to come back to him void. Right? That's Isaiah 55 and 11. Right? And Habakkuk chapter 2 verse 3. Right? Things are playing upon table. It will happen. Right? Though it tarry, it's going to come to pass, man. Right? Revelation chapter 11 verse 18, and the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come, and the time of the dead, that they shall be judged, and thou shouldest give reward unto thy servants the prophets, and to the saints, and them that fear thy name, small and great, shouldest destroy them which destroy the earth. Right? So the other nations will be mad because they thought that they were going to rule next after America had been destroyed. Right? I think they're going to get a reward for this, and the dominion will be taken away as well, like America. So all these nations are going to destroy America, and at the end, they're all going to be humbled and subdued under the Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. Right? And with the destruction comes reward, not by because you're an Israelite, but because your faith and works, man. Right? So we're ultimately going to be saved from our faith, by our faith and our works. Right? Being an Israelite is not going to be enough. This knowing that you're Israelite is not going to be enough, man, that day. right? You're gonna have to have your works and your faith, man, and mainly your faith, right? Because if you ain't got faith in Yahweh Shem Yahushua, man, what's the point, right? Verse 19, it said, the temple of the Most High was open in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament, and there were lightnings and voices and thunderings and an earthquake and great hail, right? So there's a temple in heaven like we have the one on earth, right? The things that done on earth is just a shadow of things to come, man, right? So you have the temple, that was open in heaven, man, right? So, this has been a Revelations 11 breakdown through the Spirit. I try to do it, make it as plain as I could for Israel, because I know Israel got a short attention span. So this is Revelation chapter 11 breakdown in 20 minutes. All praise to Yahweh Shem Yahushua. You know, everything is plain upon tables. Lord willing, I'll be back with more. Right. So once again, I'm gonna give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Shem Yahushua. You know, I won't be able to do these videos through the Spirit, and you know, from the brothers and sisters, for the brothers, that I also learned from. Hey, all praise to Yahweh Shem Yahushua for this truth and for sincere acumen that we can learn from, that we can get these precepts from, and ultimately, it's of the Lord that we able to break these things down, right? So, Kal Halal Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushua, Ba'Shem Rakakadash, Shalom.